Hello and welcome to this week's video, an overview on the world's fairs, in particularly the ones from the late 1800s, early 1900s, going over the frequency of them, the oddities of them, and more. You see here we're just highlighting a few of the pictures and collections from many World's Fairs throughout the years. Here's a colorization of the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. And they tell us with this narrative, it's about the same for all these World's Fairs. Built temporary, made to only go on for 6 months, and then torn down shortly after. And more fascinating enough, they only took about 2 years to build. So when I do these World Fairs videos, I feel a lot of people don't understand just the immense amount of World's Fairs that were going on. These weren't just 1 or 2 magnificent shows. Starting at around the 1850s, the first one being in London. Well, technically the first one being in 1829 in America. And every year since, there was a World's Fair, not just one. Many of them you'll see here having multiple in the same year. In 1862, Hamburg, Germany, London, England. And that's just a few. London, England, Lyon, France in 1872. Look at all of these fairs year after year. Magnificent, grand structure, hundreds of them built in less than 2 years' time, only to be torn down. Type in any one of these in Google here, or Pinterest. And they're all magnificent. Just look at these. Sydney, Australia, for a newly founded country. They had a World's Fair in Sydney and Melbourne. Just look at these magnificent buildings from them. And they were all, they say, temporary. And the list goes on. So 1879, 1880, there was one in Sydney. And then 1 year later, there was one in Melbourne. Then it goes back to America. Then there's times, here's we got in 1883, 1, 2, 3 World's Fairs. Well, they say this one in New York was never held, I guess. Here we go in 1884, though. There was one in Scotland, St. Louis, and Turin, Italy. Then there was one in New Orleans, 3 in 1885. And I mean, the list goes on and on. Look at all of these multiple World's Fairs in a single year. 4 in 1 year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in 1 year. And then in the 1900s, they just slowly start tapering off. Right at the time of the Great World Wars, World War I, World War II. And then you see we still had them in the mid-1900s, but they start dying out one at a time here. Go every year, and then every couple years. 1992, 93, 2000. And it just kind of tapers off. I mean, let's just highlight on one of my favorite World's Fairs, Chicago's 1893. Just some of the commodities, some of the firsts that came out of there. These were reintroducing a new narrative, if you would, on the old world's architecture, the founded architecture. You have the first that were introduced, like cream of wheat, brownies, juicy fruit gum, Quaker oats, peanut butter, Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, Vienna sausage, Cracker Jacks, Aunt Jemima's pancakes. And just all of these canals here, they all had to be dug out by hand. All of these fully grown trees. Viking ships and all. Establishing their version of history for the masses. Over 17 million people attended this fair alone. In 1893. No real forms of mass transportation. I mean, just look at the detail on some of these. Does any of this look temporary? And even if you could make it temporarily, why would you spend so much detail, so much money and effort just to tear it down in 6 months' time? I mean, look at this picture. This is from 1893 too. You can clearly see the editing of the skies right here for one. All the rough edging right here. The whited out skies, of course. But look at the age of this. Look at the detail for one. This is like a drained fountain here. Does any of this look temporary to you? Just the detail alone. This is 1893, before power tools or anything like that. This all had to be done by hand. Maybe just look at this magnificent colorized photo. It was called the White City for a reason. And even the interiors. I mean, just look at some of these presentations. The world's first movable sidewalk here down at the lakefront. And this is the same place where the Bean is at now, for those wondering. But just look at this. This was in a rice exhibit. I mean, just inside and out. Over 200 structures. Can you imagine the logistics of building this in 2 years? Let alone the 27 million people that attended just this World's Fair alone. It's mind-boggling. I mean, the Ferris wheel here that could hold thousands. All temporary, they say. What a joke. So moving on from the Chicago World's Fair, another World's Fair I kind of wanted to highlight on is the 1915 World's Fair in California. So one of the reasons I wanted to highlight the 1915 World's Fairs, it's got a great video, a couple of them actually. Let's start with this one here. This is the non-colored one, but it is over 40 minutes long. Amazing footage here. I'll have the full video up on my Telegram if you guys want to pan through it yourself, but just take a look at the scenes here. The beautiful architecture that they stand behind. All of these canals hand dug. Look at the age of it. The Palace of Fine Arts, I believe. All of this fully grown trees and foliage, all up on temporary structures. Going down the beautiful waterway here. Odd dance scene in front of that Palace of Fine Arts. Very odd scenes. Like I said, it's like they're introducing a narrative. Just look at the age, the size of these structures. Another thing you see at these fairs, you know, it's everybody is dressed in their Sunday best. Here at the 1915 World's Fairs, about 17 million people attended this one in the 6-month time frame. Mostly all adults, you know, for that small little group of kids I seen, they're all adults dressed in their Sunday best. Absolutely no food or drink or anything like that. No baggage for all these buildings to go visit. All that detail. I'll slide through a little bit of this. I have a really great colorized version I want to show you as well. But I've noticed I haven't really covered anything on my YouTube channel, unfortunately, regards to the World's Fair, so I'll definitely do some more as this video is already getting a little long. I can just highlight some more of the architecture here. Look at that. Odd war scene that they're reenacting here. Cradling a bird. Look at those columns. Just look at that. Nothing looks temporary about this. And the sheer size of it alone. Just jumping on top of the temporary statue. I spent years working in logistics, and I'm telling you, temporary or otherwise, you're not pulling this off with the manpower, the transportation, the supplies, all of that. Even today would be an impossible feat to pull off. Alright, let's get to that colored video I have here. Alright. And this one is about only 10 minutes long, but just kind of go over the highlights. It definitely shows the more view of all the architecture here and kind of gives you a good scale of it. I'll put the whole thing on my Telegram as well. Just look at that. Odd way of him introducing that. The last surviving memory of a phantom city. The Palace of Fine Arts. Odd for something that's temporary. Look at this here. Look at that architecture. All of that said to be temporary, torn down 6 months afterwards. This looks like a sci-fi palace, like something out of Star Wars almost. Palace of Naboo. Look at all of those people. That powerful cascading water fountain. Magnificent. That dome, those free energy towers, all that beautiful scenery. This is inside the Palace of Horticulture, I believe, back there. Look at that. All of that, they say, took 2 years to build. Just look at these people on the inside of this compared to... I don't know if I can get this to unzoom here. Sorry, folks. All these fully grown trees, all these dug out canals. Tell me, does this at all look temporary? And again, I ask you, if it was temporary, why would you put so much detail, so much beauty into something you're going to tear down in 6 months? Just for an exposition.
Right.
There's a small cameo of Mrs. Improbable Dreamer in the background. Very few children at this event, too. There's one there. But again, think of this, if 1 or 2 of these I could maybe see as possible. But for them to be pulling these off year after year, as you've seen in that list, some multiple, 3, 4, 5 of them in 1 year.
Right.
And all the crowds that gathered, without airports, without air travel, so they say. Does any of that seem possible? There's a huge group of little kids running around like a little parade or something there. And of course, you have these indigenous people, these zoo of people that they had at the World's Fairs, which were exactly what they sounded like. They had groups of indigenous people by the hundreds in these little habitats. Those were displayed year after year, these World's Fairs. And highlighting over some of the things at the 1915 World's Fair, of course, you got the flights, new fixed wing, and wow, look at that lit up. Magnificent. It looks like something out of a sci-fi fantasy palace. I'll have this full video up as well on my Telegram. I urge you to check out both of those. But of course, getting to those zoo of people, I have to talk about one other thing at these World's Fairs. The carnival barker turned fake doctor hero, creating the baby incubators at all these World's Fairs. This hero, carnival barker, created these big exhibits where he would have these premature babies gathered up all over the country from who knows where, in these magnificent halls at these World's Fairs where people would pay to gawk at them. Infant incubators with living infants. Apparently it was quite the attraction. It was shown year after year at these World's Fairs. This odd pyramid at the 1909 Alaskan Yukon Pacific Exposition, Baby Incubator Cafe, right next to the creepy pyramid. Incubators. All the world loves babies. Very strange. Again, people would pay to see this. I mean, just look at the scenes. Baby incubators with living babies, once seen, never forgotten. Apparently it was such a grand scene to see living babies back then, where people would gawk at them. I mean, just line them up in rows. So to kind of wrap up here, I have so many of those World's Fairs I could cover. And the list goes on and on. Again, these were year after year. This was in 1901, Buffalo. Look at these temporary structures. This canal, all being dug, and it's just a park now in Buffalo. It's beautiful canal work. So as I said, I believe that these were to install the new narrative. You have all the world's first, right up to Aunt Jemima's pancakes, telling people the supposed inventions of the world, the supposed foods of the world, the supposed history of the world. And the 17 million, 27 million people plus that visited these World's Fairs time after time bought it up. And if you've seen anything in the last few years, you see that most of the masses buy up the narrative unquestioned. And like I said, I believe I'll leave it here for tonight, but I'll definitely do more on these World's Fairs on my YouTube. I didn't realize I haven't really touched anything on them in the past years. The Tennessee World's Fair in 1897 had this grand pyramid. You see just how massive and well built this temporary pyramid was, by how many people are standing on the top deck here. But I'll leave it at that for tonight. And if you guys appreciate my content and would like to support it, you can either buy me a cup of coffee or Venmo me. The link is in the bio. I appreciate all the contributions and all the support you've given me. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video if you haven't already. And till next time, question everything, friends.